Welcome everyone, this is Danny and Karl with Get Wisdom, and today Karl is going to channel Michael Ruppert, who was a law enforcement officer and then a whistleblower, and had a very troubled period in his life prior to his death in 2014. And so we'll be talking about this fellow a little bit, and about channeling in general, if this is the first time you've seen one of these videos. And Karl will channel Michael Ruppert. Okay, so thanks for joining us, and thank you, Karl, for doing this with us, and let's get started.
All right, well, thank you, Danny, for hosting, and thanks to all of you for watching this. We're wanting to learn more about the world and about us and the human dilemma, and use as an object lesson people who've come before and gone back home to the light and have a different perspective and more knowledge about what they were doing even, and what they were involved in the parts that were hidden from them or uninterpretable. And much of life is like that for all of us. We're a part of a big swirling mass of other people and institutional influences and cultural influences and friends, neighbors, associates, and everyone has their individuality. And if you notice, there's a lot of differences of opinion about everything. This is really a fascinating phenomenon that, as keen as we might think we are in observing the passing scene, there's very little of whatever happens that you can get unanimous agreement about, because everyone's got a different slant. But there are important things that get missed, and for sinister reasons. And so we do talk to people who are whistleblowers from time to time because they have something to tell us that's important to know.
It's hard to think of going from a human life in this day and age or any day and age, and then dying, and then going to the light, and then looking back on the life in your world and seeing it how it really is, comparing it to what you thought it was. I mean, that must be quite an experience for someone who's, from the perspective of them being a human in their day-to-day life, going to the light, dying and transitioning, going to the light, and then seeing the world as it really is, thinking that you had that ability when you were a human. I mean, that must be just like, the good thing is that when you go to the light, you're with creators. So there's a sense of security there that you don't have as a human. So, I think that's the counterbalancing force. But it must be a shock nonetheless to go, oh my gosh, I never knew that's what was really going on.
Yeah, and I think that is the distinguishing feature of human versus light being. They know everything or can find it out readily through an intuitive reach that is magnificent and quite precise and comprehensive. They can have their thoughts go anywhere and just know things as a consequence. And they can see the whole human landscape and watch from above and see everything that goes on. And here we are in our own little compartmental life and buffeted about and largely in the dark about all the important stuff. And so they see very clearly why humans struggle so. And it really is that we're living at a disadvantage in so many ways. Part of it is that visibility, lack of visibility.
Yeah. And the other thing I find interesting in all of this is that, we can go to the soothsayers and the sages and the ones that we think of as being enlightened and study them, and then we may not agree, or we say, well, they had the capability of seeing things that I'll probably never be able to see or understand, but they still have a worldview that they're sharing with us. Yeah. And the realization that even that is lacking, even that is an incomplete story, even that is misguided or a complete falsehood, in fact, in some cases. But revered for hundreds of years as being like the epitome of an accurate worldview, or galactic history or human history or something like that. And most of the ones I've encountered don't really line up with what we've learned through the channeling series.
Well, this is what we're learning as we go, that not only is there a human filter and therefore a kind of misperception that's sort of inherent and will just take place because everyone has built-in limits, built-in biases, and so on. There's also a level of corruption and alteration of perception through instilling false beliefs in people and then giving them programming on a regular basis. And intuitive people are no exception. In fact, they might be more reachable and have a more profound consequence because of it.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that, it's just been so shocking to me in the course of all the things we've been doing together and exploring these kinds of phenomena.
Yeah.
That, for example, most channelers aren't channeling. They're not truly channeling, which is using an ability to connect with something through their consciousness as an outreach from them or doing it through the divine. They're listening to an extraterrestrial psychic talking to them telepathically.
Right. And without a foundation of an invitation that preceded any of that. It's usually something like, hi, I'm here. You weren't asking to talk to anybody. But here, there's this voice in your head, or whatever, however it's done, uninvited, and then the reassuring words and reassuring feelings come with it, and game over. Game over.
And the light doesn't work that way.
Right.
You have to invite them
Right.
And so these stories, being awakened in the night and needing to go to the typewriter because there's a message coming, and then, God is saying something, this is not, there's a red flag there to pay attention to. But even when people reach out, if they don't do it with the intent to go to a holy source with divine protection, they'll get noticed. And then someone will be there because they're watching the skies and they're watching for intuitive outreaches. And then they go in, do a handshake sort of, and then start to cultivate that person.
Right.
And they end up serving their needs seemingly, but it's with low level information, kind of encouragement, hand holding, and
right.
And nothing that will help to really solve problems.
Exactly.
And then they'll get a lot of manipulation to keep them complacent and thinking, well, everything is well. And
not questioning anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna read about Michael here. You will have seen a little intro, and this will be a bit of a repetition. But I know a lot of people don't watch the videos; they listen to the podcast version of these channeling series. So I think it's pretty important that we set the stage for who this guy was. I had the pleasure of meeting him back, I think it was around 2012, somewhere in there, at the Sebastopol Grange. He used to live down our way, and he actually allegedly committed suicide in a small town just north of here in Napa County called Calistoga. So Michael Ruppert was a former LA police officer who later tried to expose government corruption and drug smuggling. He is said to be a victim of gang stalking and later committed suicide. Michael Craig Ruppert was an American writer, former Los Angeles Police Department officer, investigative journalist, political activist, and peak oil awareness advocate known for his 2004 book, Crossing the Rubicon, The Decline of the American Empire and the End of the Age of Oil. Here's that book right here. It's about 640-something pages long. I read it shortly after it came out, I think, if I remember correctly. It's quite a read. He did a great job. There's an index, there's references. He did this in a very scholarly fashion. It's a great book. You'll learn a lot by reading this book. Although, if you're into reading, I would suggest get wisdom material. That's my suggestion. If you're into saving time and learning,
no bias there.
No bias. No bias. Okay. So he wrote that book back in 2004, and from 1999 until 2006, Ruppert edited and published From the Wilderness, a newsletter and website covering a range of topics, including international politics, the CIA, peak oil, civil liberties, drugs, economics, corruption, and the nature of the 9/11 conspiracy. Ruppert joined the LAPD in 1973. He was assigned to handle narcotics investigations in the most dangerous neighborhoods of Los Angeles. Beginning in 1976, he made discoveries that led him to believe that he had stumbled onto a large network of narcotics traffickers and that the U.S. military, as well as the LAPD, might be involved. He resigned from the force in November of 1978. On November 15, 1996, then Director of Central Intelligence John Deutsch visited Los Angeles Locke High School for a town hall meeting. At the meeting, Ruppert publicly confronted Deutsch, I'm not sure how to say that, saying that in his experience as an LAPD narcotics officer, he had seen evidence of the CIA complicity in the drug dealing. He went on to become an investigative journalist and established the publication From the Wilderness, a watchdog publication that exposed government corruption, including his experience with the CIA drug dealing activities. In the summer of 2006, claiming government harassment and fearing for his life, Ruppert left the United States with Raul Santiago for Venezuela, vowing not to return. The Ashland Daily Tidings reported that in June of 2006, Ruppert had accused a former female employee of burglarizing the offices From the Wilderness, a case in which Ruppert himself was considered a potential suspect. Around the same time, the former female employee accused him, in turn, of sexual harassment. She said that Ruppert had fired her after she refused his sexual advances. Ruppert denied that he had sexually harassed her and that the case was based on a deliberate attempt to discredit his work, a movie coming out about his views and his former newsletter From the Wilderness. In 2009, Ruppert was ordered to pay a $125,000 fine by the Oregon Labor Board in the case. From the Wilderness was a newsletter published from 1998 to 2006 by the media company From the Wilderness Publications. The newsletter covered political and governmental issues. It was published 11 times a year, but featured weekly updates online. The end of From the Wilderness was announced in the post at the website on November 7, 2006. Reasons for the closure were detailed in the article. Ruppert claimed his bad health, glitches that disabled their web store, problems of human origin, and his departure to Venezuela had led to the demise of From the Wilderness. After shutting down, From the Wilderness was sued by their landlord for unpaid rent owed on their Ashland office space. Later that year, Ruppert flew to Toronto, Canada for medical treatment. The following statement was posted on From the Wilderness website on November 26, 2006. Personally, I am through forever with investigative journalism and public lecturing. I'm leaving public life. It is my hope that by continuing to repeat this sincere position that many of the inexplicable difficulties which have dominated my life over the past months will ease. It's time to move on. I spent 27 years as a dedicated public activist, and that is something which I'm no longer able or inclined to do. The price is ultimately too great. On April 13, 2014, Ruppert was found dead in Napa County at home just outside the Calistoga, California city limits. Ruppert died of a single self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. This was confirmed by close friend and property owner and landlord Jack Martin. Martin found Ruppert's body and suicide note. According to his business partner and last attorney of record, Wesley Miller, Ruppert shot himself after taping his final broadcast of the Lifeboat Hour with friend and colleague Carolyn Baker, Ph.D. Okay, that was kind of long. I apologize, but it sets the stage for who we're talking to here. And I was telling Karl that I had the pleasure of meeting him at the Sebastopol Grange. I think it was in 2012 or something like that. And my impression was that he was hurting at the time, and I wanted to do an interview with him actually, although I didn't have my my YouTube channel at the time, but something was telling me to keep my distance, and I did. I didn't know what I know now, not even close. But I just had this feeling like I should keep my distance from him. But there was three of us out in back, and they were passing around a joint, and I declined and just kind of watched, because this is the first time I've ever met him. I've been following him for years. I used to be a regular reader of the From the Wilderness publication on the internet. So that's my my tie to this fellow. There's a couple good articles that I sent over to Karl in preparation too. This is one is called "The Unbelievable Life and Death of Michael Ruppert," and it's by Matt Stroud. It was written in July 22nd, 2014. And then here's another article with a picture of Gary Webb, a guy that Karl and I have also done a video on, where Karl channeled Gary Webb, who is this reporter for the San Jose Mercury News, who also exposed the CIA involvement in cocaine trafficking in Southern California. And this one is about Michael Ruppert II, the man the CIA wants you to forget. So, interesting outcomes for both of these guys, or unfortunate might be a better word. So anyway, that's the background.
Yeah, and quite an interesting character. There's something remarkable about someone who lives a life as he did, just seemingly wanting to tickle the tiger, go where he's not wanted, go where he's likely to get in trouble, at a minimum, be resisted and put at risk in some way, and likely not be able to get very far as an individual. But there's got to be a driving force there.
And some pretty heavyweight divine protection for this guy, because he had to have known as an LA police officer that going up against the CIA in the way that he did it, it's kind of like signing it, I mean, I don't think you're going to find too many people who did what he did and survived. That's my personal opinion. Just,
Yeah, he had 9 lives, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to speak. Yeah, because you can imagine what can happen just going once into the fray and putting those institutions on the spot. and being a threat to them. And then doing it over and over, he was kind of a chronic gadfly and questioner, and very much vocal about it all.
Yeah.
And wanting to share things, stir things up, and kind of the consummate conspiracy theorist from the slurring expression that the CIA invented about such things. These are not scholars, they're conspiracy theorists.
Right. And both of his parents worked for the government in Washington, D.C. He was born in 1951 in Washington, D.C., and both of his parents worked for the government. I think his mom worked for the State Department and his dad something else. I don't know what it was, but they both had security clearances, both of his parents. So, there's not too many people like him out there. Or if they are, that we have never heard about them and they're likely dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's who Karl's gonna channel for us today, and we've only got 5 questions, but I think we might hear some interesting things from Michael Ruppert in the light.
All right, well, I'll reach out to him, and I do this through Creator of All It Is in order for it to be accurate and safe as well. We don't want an imposter jumping in and giving us false information. And most channelers we alluded to earlier are not channeling who they think they are. They might not even be channeling. They might just be totally listening to a voice that comes in intrusively, even though they might want to learn something. So this is a troubled area, and just as a red flag for folks to be sure that they think about this. And the spiritual people, I really feel concerned for. My heart goes out to them because they mean well. They're wanting to do good things. And they're being misdirected and held kind of on the sidelines with a hand-holding exercise. And their minds start to close down, and they don't approach things critically and really seeking truth, and are just complacent. And it's such a waste of good intentions. And the world needs that right now. And so this fellow, I think, is someone who was really independent-minded and got away with it for a good long while. So we're looking forward to speaking with him, and I will get in the state of consciousness I need, put the safety around the work, and then he'll announce when he's on board.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This is Michael Ruppert speaking.
Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us about the circumstances of your suicide and if you were able to transition successfully?
My suicide is quite interesting as a phenomenon, as well as a diagnostic indicator of what you are up against as a people. I was manipulated to fail. I was manipulated to be unhappy. I was manipulated to be thwarted again and again in spite of my good intentions and keen interest in discovering the truth about things and exploring many dark doings, dark corners, serious issues that affect people on all levels, individuals, groups, and the whole of the nation, as well as international interchanges and influences through workings of the government, military, and intelligence agencies. I was well aware of the possibility of corruption from my police work and saw government entanglements in the drug trade. Rather than dismissing that as a possible rogue operation, truly having more to do with individuals of shady character and not the institution they were serving, I found out, looking a little deeper and through colleagues, that this was the norm and not the exception. Crime is institutionalized throughout government. This is why there is so much corruption at the top, because there is corruption everywhere. It does not start down below. It starts at the top. And much of it is sinister and a kind of evil. And that is because it is orchestrated to be that way through external forces. We are speaking here now of, yes, a conspiracy, that dreaded word that is a hot button of controversy, which is a bit ridiculous on its face, because this is something that happens again and again and again, and has all through human history. People are always conspiring with one another for good things or bad. It is not necessarily a judgment. But when applied to the sinister actions of individuals or institutions is a very appropriate term. There is no better term for it, because it covers the whole and deep and dark meaning behind all that happens that harms the world. People become a kind of operator, a minion, an underling directed about and influenced from within their own mind to make poor choices and to engage in activities that gradually test and then override their own ethics and morality. This can take a while, but when the interlopers put their mind to it, they almost always win. That is the power of mind control at work. This is not a misnomer. It is control of the mind. It can be subtle, it can be indirect and partial in its influence. It can be quite profound and totally ensnare a person in a false view of the world in great detail, with marching orders, agendas, and a lifelong pursuit of wrongdoing on the part of cherished beliefs that themselves are hollow, but believed totally by the individual. The fact that this can be done to a human being is shocking, but revealing. We mean by this to help wake people up. You at Get Wisdom talk about mind control on a regular basis. And that is not fully appreciated as to what it represents. This goes far beyond propaganda, which is a message intended to influence through deception, to shape attitudes and opinions and subsequent actions. Mind control is different. It is co-opting the sovereignty of someone in some way or another to varying degrees. My sovereignty was co-opted to cultivate within my own thinking a kind of fatalistic view and wanting to escape from what I was programmed to believe more and more would be a dire catastrophe, and to feel that was looming and wanting to, in effect, flee the scene, to give up and get out. This rose to a very high level of inner unhappiness and discord. And this was done to such a degree, it was directly responsible for my death through my own hands. In actuality, they can take over someone's body to make it shoot themselves in the head. But they prefer making people suffer first. And that was my fate and my sentence as a penalty for being a gadfly, as was alluded to. This was much more than wanting to be a nuisance or simply making noise and creating a stir, perhaps for publicity alone, self-aggrandizement, misguided sense of importance, and the various attitudes people have in dismissing someone who is asking awkward questions. People who are true seekers and in a position to blow the whistle on the powers that be are targeted routinely to slap them down, push back on them, and above all else, wear them down and out to the point where they become ineffectual. And there is a very strong desire to make them suffer along the way. A quick death is too easy. They want you to suffer first. This is what they did to me. And in the end, made me so doubt my future and doubt myself, in feeling more and more I was ending up a failure, that I turned to suicide through implanted beliefs and agendas. That is their power, to corrupt so totally, people will destroy themselves. If they can do that to me, they can do it to you.
Okay, thank you. This was your last prayer. I pray to Mother Earth and Father Sky. I pray to the four winds and ask them to carry my prayer and the sounds of my heart to all things and all places. I pray to the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the things that crawl, the things that fly, the things that swim. I pray to all things that grow in Mother Earth. I pray to the stone people. I pray to the little people. I offer tobacco. I offer my flesh. I offer my life. I pray to all things seen and unseen, known and unknown. For we are all one. This is my final offering. I do it for the children so that they might live. There is no more time. May my offering release love and light into this darkness. Light a fire for me. Pray for me. The sun will rise. The sun will rise. Now that you're a light being, would you change this prayer? If so, what would you change?